I stopped walking the day I found that metal box. Not because my legs gave out, they hadn't yet, not at 92. I stopped because I knew what was inside before I even opened it. 50 years I kept it buried in my garage, wrapped in oilcloth, hidden under paint cans and old tarps. 50 years of telling myself I'd throw it away tomorrow. But you don't throw away something like that. You live with it. You carry it the way you carry shrapnel too deep to remove. It was April of '45. We'd pushed into Germany, and the air smelled like ash and wet concrete. Everything was gray. The buildings, the sky, the faces of the people watching us from broken windows. I was 20 years old, a private first class from a town in Ohio nobody's heard of. I'd been in Europe 8 months by then. Long enough to stop flinching at every sound, long enough to know the difference between artillery and thunder. Our unit got orders to sweep a sector outside Berlin. The fighting had moved east, but command wanted us checking for holdouts, supplies, anything useful. Most of what we found was rubble, buildings that used to be something, now just piles of brick and twisted metal. We moved through them carefully, always carefully. You never knew what was waiting. That's when I saw the entrance. Just a dark square in the ground, half covered by debris. Stairs going down. My sergeant, a guy named Collins from Pennsylvania, he looked at me and nodded. We'd done this before. Go down, check it out, come back up. Simple. Except nothing was ever simple. I went first. Collins stayed topside with his rifle ready. The stairs were concrete, steep, and the air got colder with each step. My boots echoed in a way that made my skin crawl. At the bottom, there was a corridor. Light still worked, dim yellow bulbs that flickered. That surprised me. Most places we found, the power was long gone. The bunker was bigger than I expected. Rooms branching off the main corridor, storage areas, what looked like sleeping quarters. And then I found the office. That's what I called it in my head. A desk, filing cabinets, maps on the walls. Everything organized, like whoever worked here had just stepped out for lunch. I should have called Collins down, should have followed procedure. But I was 20 and curious and maybe a little bit stupid. I opened the first cabinet. Files, dozens of them. Documents with official seals, typed pages in German I couldn't read. But some had English translations clipped to them. Someone had been preparing these for something, for someone. That's when I found the metal box. It was locked, sitting on the desk like it was waiting for me. I used my knife to pry it open. Inside were photographs, documents, and a ledger. Names, dates, locations. My German wasn't good, but I knew enough. I knew what I was looking at. I sat there in that bunker, in that chair, and I read. I don't know how long. Could have been 10 minutes. Could have been an hour. The words burned into my mind the way frost burns skin. When I finally stood up, my hands were shaking. Not from fear, from something else. Something I didn't have a name for. Collins called down to me. Everything okay? I told him yeah. Told him there was nothing down here worth reporting. I took that metal box, wrapped it in my field jacket, and brought it up. He didn't ask what it was. We had an understanding by then. Sometimes you found things, sometimes you kept them. The war was ending. We were all keeping things. Back at camp, I hid the box in my gear. Told myself I'd turn it in. Told myself every day for a week, but I didn't. Because the things in that box, the names and numbers and plans, they weren't just about the war. They were about after. About what was supposed to happen when the fighting stopped. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. We moved east. The war ended. I came home. That box came with me. I never told anyone about it. Not my wife. Not my kids. Not the guys I served with. It sat in my garage for 5 decades, and I tried to forget it was there. But you can't forget something like that. It works on you, slowly, like rust. In '95, 50 years after I found it, someone came to my door, a man in a suit. He didn't say he was from the government, but I knew. You get to my age, you know things without being told. He asked if I'd served in Germany, asked if I'd ever been in Berlin. I said yes. He asked if I'd ever found anything unusual. I said no. He looked at me for a long time. Then he smiled, said he was glad to hear it, said sometimes soldiers found things they shouldn't have, said those things could cause problems if they surfaced, could hurt people, could complicate relationships between countries. He said if I ever did remember finding something, there were people who could help, people who could make sure it was handled properly. Then he handed me an envelope, said it was a thank you for my service, for my discretion. I didn't open it until he left. Inside was a check. More money than I'd made in 5 years of working at the plant. More money than made sense for gratitude. I burned the check. I know that sounds stupid. Maybe it was, but I didn't want that money. Didn't want whatever came with it, because that man knew. Somehow he knew I had that box, and he was telling me to keep quiet, to keep it buried. For another 20 years I did. The box stayed in my garage. The memories stayed in my head. I got older. My wife passed. My kids moved away. And I started thinking about what happens to secrets when the people keeping them die. I started thinking about those names in that ledger, about what they meant. The documents I found weren't about battles. They weren't about strategy or tactics. They were about people, scientists, engineers, intelligence officers. And they were about agreements, plans to bring them to America, to Britain, to Russia. Plans that started before the war even ended. Plans that nobody was supposed to know about. I'd heard of Operation Paperclip. Everyone had by then. The program that brought German scientists to America, von Braun and the others. But what I found in that bunker went deeper. Names that never made it into the official records. People who'd done things, terrible things, and were being quietly relocated. Given new identities, new lives. There were photographs. Men in SS uniforms shaking hands with men in American uniforms. Documents showing bank accounts, property transfers, escape routes. And the ledger. Page after page of names with notes beside them. Useful, recruit, protect, eliminate. That last category bothered me most. The ones marked eliminate weren't enemy soldiers. They were people who knew too much. Witnesses, lower-level officials who might talk. Even some Allied personnel. Names with dates beside them. Some of those dates were after the war ended. I was 20 years old when I found those documents. I didn't understand what I was holding. I thought maybe it was propaganda, something planted to confuse us. But as I got older, as I read more about what happened after the war, I started to understand. What I found was real, and it was dangerous. The man who came to my door in '95, he never threatened me, never said what would happen if I talked. But the message was clear. Some secrets stay buried because digging them up hurts everyone. The people named in those documents, many of them were probably dead by then, but their children weren't. Their work wasn't. The systems they built, the programs they started, those were still running. I thought about going to the press. I thought about it a lot. But what would I say? That I stole classified documents 50 years ago and hid them? That I had proof of things people already suspected? That wouldn't change anything. It would just make me a target, make my family targets. So I kept quiet. And I kept that box, because throwing it away felt like forgetting. And these things shouldn't be forgotten, even if they can't be told. The bunker where I found it, I've tried to find records of it, tried to figure out whose office that was, but there's nothing. No maps showing a bunker in that location. No reports from other units about finding it. It's like it never existed. Maybe it didn't. Maybe it was scrubbed from the records the same way those names were scrubbed from history. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. Collins, my sergeant, he died in '68, heart attack. I went to his funeral. His widow asked me about the war, asked if I remembered anything special about the last days. I told her no, told her it was mostly just waiting for orders to go home. She seemed relieved. I think she was worried I'd tell her something that would change how she remembered him. That's what these secrets do. They don't just hide the past, they protect it. They let people remember things the way they want to. The hero scientists who took us to the moon. The brave intelligence officers who won the Cold War. The necessary compromises that kept us safe. Nobody wants to hear about the things that made those victories possible. About the men who should have hanged at Nuremberg, but instead got research labs in Maryland. I started having nightmares about it in my 60s. Dreams where I was back in that bunker. But in the dreams, I wasn't alone. The office was full of people. The men from the photographs, the names from the ledger. They were all there, watching me read their files. And they were smiling, because they knew. They knew I wouldn't tell. One dream, I remember it clearly. One of them spoke to me. He said, "History is written by whoever survives to write it." Said the documents I found, they were just rough drafts. Said the final version was much cleaner, much simpler, much easier to believe. I woke up from that dream and I went to my garage. I opened that box for the first time in years, and I read through it all again, making sure I hadn't imagined it, making sure it was real. It was. every page, every name, every note about who was useful and who wasn't. There was one photograph I kept coming back to. It showed a group of men standing outside a building, some in German uniforms, some in American. They were all smiling. In the background, you could see part of a sign. I couldn't make out all of it, but I recognized the style. It was a camp, one of the camps we liberated. That photograph was taken after liberation, after we'd seen what was inside those places, after we documented the evidence. And these men were smiling, standing there like they were at a company picnic because they'd made a deal. Their knowledge for their freedom, their expertise for their silence. I tried to imagine being the man who made that deal, the officer who decided that what these men knew was worth more than what they'd done. I tried to understand the logic, the cold calculation that weighs lives against advantage, but I couldn't. At 20, I couldn't. At 92, I still can't. Maybe that's why I'm telling this now, because I'm running out of time to understand, because soon I'll be gone and that box will be gone and nobody will know. And maybe that's how it should be. Maybe some things die with the people who carried them. Maybe that's mercy, but it doesn't feel like mercy. It feels like cowardice. It feels like I found something that mattered and I let fear keep me quiet. The man in the suit, he didn't scare me. The money didn't tempt me. What scared me was being alone, being the only one who knew, being responsible for what happened if I told. That's the thing about secrets like this. They isolate you. You can't share the burden. You can't ask for advice. You just carry it, day after day, year after year, until it becomes part of you, until you can't remember what it felt like before you knew. My wife, before she died, she asked me once if there was anything I needed to tell her, anything from the war that I'd kept inside. I said no. She looked at me the way she did when she knew I was lying but wasn't going to push. She said okay, said if I ever changed my mind, she'd listen, but I never did, because telling her would have made her carry it too. And I loved her too much for that. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. After she passed, I thought about destroying the box, burning it, ending it, but I couldn't. Because those names, those people in the ledger, they had families too. Children, grandchildren, people who grew up thinking their grandfather was a brilliant scientist or a decorated officer. People who built their lives on those stories. What right did I have to take that away from them? But then I'd think about the other families, the ones who never got closure, who never knew what happened to their loved ones, who were told there was no record, no information, no way to find out. While the men responsible lived comfortable lives under new names, worked at universities, published papers, received awards. That's the weight of it. It's not just about the past, it's about now, about today, about institutions and systems that were built on foundations I saw documented in that bunker, about careers and reputations and national narratives that depend on certain things staying hidden. I voted in every election since I came home, did my civic duty, believed in the system. But part of me always wondered how many of the people I was voting for knew. How many of them had seen documents like the ones I found? How many had made the same choice I did, to keep quiet, to let it go, to decide that stability mattered more than truth? That's not a criticism. I genuinely don't know if I would have done anything different if I'd been in their position, making policy, responsible for millions of lives, facing an enemy in the Soviet Union that had made the same deals with the same kind of men. Maybe I would have made the same choices. Maybe anyone would have. But that doesn't make it right. It just makes it human. And sometimes I think that's the real secret. Not the names or the documents or the deals, but the fact that we're all capable of it. All capable of deciding that our cause matters more than our principles, that the end justifies the means, that some truth is too expensive to afford. I remember the first person I killed in the war, a German soldier, not much older than me. We surprised each other coming around a corner. I was faster. He fell, and I stood there shaking, realizing I'd just ended someone's entire existence. Someone who had a mother, maybe a wife, maybe kids, someone whose absence would leave a hole in the world. That moment taught me something about killing. It's personal, it's intimate. You see it, you feel it, you carry it. But the things in that bunker, they taught me something else. That you can kill just as thoroughly with a pen, with a signature. with a decision made in an office far from the blood and the screaming. You can eliminate people systematically, bureaucratically, and never have to look them in the eye. The ledger had dates going back to 43, before D-Day, before most Americans even set foot in Europe. Someone was already planning the aftermath, already deciding who would be valuable and who would be expendable. The war was still being fought, and they were already negotiating the peace. I found a memo in that box. It was in English, typed on American military letterhead. It outlined criteria for recruitment, technical expertise, willingness to cooperate, level of public exposure, political reliability. And then, at the bottom, almost like an afterthought, it said, previous activities should be evaluated for operational security concerns, but should not be considered disqualifying per se. Previous activities, that's what they called it. Not war crimes, not atrocities. Previous activities, like it was a job reference, like we were talking about someone who'd had a disagreement with a previous employer. That memo made me angrier than anything else in the box, because it was so calm, so reasonable, so practical. It reduced everything to a calculation, and maybe that's necessary in war. Maybe you can't win if you're not willing to make those calculations, but it doesn't make them any less terrible. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. I thought about my father while I was reading those documents. He fought in the First World War, came home different, quieter. He never talked about what he saw. I used to wonder why. Thought maybe he was just strong, stoic. Now I think maybe he was carrying his own secrets, his own moments that didn't fit the story we wanted to tell about that war. We make heroes out of veterans because we need to. Because if we acknowledged what war actually costs, what it actually requires, we might not be able to send people to do it. We might have to find other ways, but we don't. We tell stories about honor and duty and sacrifice. We give out medals, we build monuments, and the men and women who actually fought, they nod and accept it because what else can they do? Tell everyone the truth? Make them carry it too? The box is still in my garage. I haven't opened it in 5 years. My hands aren't steady enough anymore. My eyes aren't sharp enough. But I know what's in there. Every page, every name, every photograph. It's burned into me. When I die, someone will clean out my garage. They'll find that box. They'll open it. And they'll have to decide what to do with it. Part of me hopes they'll turn it over to authorities. Let historians and investigators sort through it. Let the truth come out, whatever that truth is now. But part of me hopes they'll burn it, end it. Let these ghosts rest. Because I don't know anymore if truth serves justice or just serves itself. I don't know if exposing these things would help anyone or just cause more pain. The people in those documents, most of them are dead now. Their children are old. Their grandchildren are adults with families of their own. What good does it do to dig up bones? But then I think about the families who never got answers, about the people who spent their lives wondering what happened to someone they loved, about the witnesses who were silenced, about the junior officers who raised concerns and were quietly reassigned, about all the people who tried to tell the truth and were told to forget. Don't they deserve to know they were right? I don't have an answer. At 92, I thought I'd have answers. Thought age would bring clarity, but all it's brought is more questions, more doubt, more understanding of how complicated it all is, how easy it is to judge from a distance, how hard it is when you're actually there, actually making the choice. That day in the bunker, when I found that box, I made a choice. I took it, I hid it, I didn't report it. I've spent 77 years wondering if that was right, wondering what would have happened if I'd done differently. Would it have changed anything? Would anyone have cared? Or would it have just disappeared, the way so many other inconvenient truths disappeared? The man who came to my door in '95, I wonder sometimes if he really was from the government, or if he was something else, a private contractor, a fixer, someone hired by someone who'd been named in those documents, someone with money and connections and a strong interest in keeping the past buried. I'll never know. He never came back. The check was the only evidence he existed at all. After I burned it, I watched the ashes scatter, watched that money turn to smoke, and I felt something. Not relief, not satisfaction, just a kind of finality, like I'd made my choice permanent, like I'd decided which side of the line I was on, the side that keeps quiet, the side that protects the secret, the side that decides stability matters more than truth. I'm not proud of that. But I'm not ashamed either. I'm just tired. Tired of carrying it. Tired of wondering. Tired of being the only one who knows. That's why I'm telling this now. Not the details, not the names, just the fact of it. The fact that these things exist, that they're out there, that history is messier than we want it to be. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. Someone asked me once what I learned from the war. I gave them the usual answer: courage, brotherhood, the value of freedom. But the real answer, the one I couldn't say, is that I learned how much we're willing to forget, how much we're willing to overlook, how many compromises we can make and still convince ourselves we're the good guys. We were the good guys. I believe that. We stopped something terrible. We liberated the camps. We saw what was there. We documented it. We made sure the world knew, but we also made deals. We recruited the architects. We protected the perpetrators. We decided that their knowledge was worth more than justice for their victims. And we lived with that. We built a world on that. The Cold War made it easier. We needed every advantage. We needed to win. And if that meant working with people who'd done unthinkable things, well, they'd done those things to someone else, not to us. We could separate the person from the expertise. We could tell ourselves it was practical, necessary, the lesser evil. Maybe it was. Maybe without those scientists, we don't win the space race. Maybe without those intelligence officers, we don't win the Cold War. Maybe without those compromises, the world is worse. I don't know. Nobody knows. We don't get to see the other timeline. We don't get to compare. We just live in this one and try to make sense of it. But I think about the people in the ledger marked eliminate. I think about them a lot. They weren't threats. They were inconveniences. They knew things they shouldn't have known. They'd seen things they weren't supposed to see, and they were removed, quietly, efficiently, with paperwork to explain their disappearance, training accident, illness, reassignment to a unit that didn't exist. How many of them were there? How many people who tried to tell the truth and were silenced? How many officers who raised concerns and were quietly pushed out? How many witnesses who saw too much and had to be managed? The ledger I found had maybe 24 names, but it was just one ledger, from one office, in one bunker. How many others were there? I met a man in the 80s, a researcher working on a book about Operation Paperclip. He was interviewing veterans, trying to get their stories, trying to piece together what really happened. I told him I didn't know anything, hadn't seen anything unusual. He looked at me the way that man in the suit had looked at me, like he knew I was lying but understood why. He thanked me for my time and left. His book came out a few years later. It was thorough, well-researched. It named names and provided documentation, and it barely made a ripple. A few reviews, a few libraries bought it, and then it was forgotten. That's when I realized, even if I told, even if I brought out that box and showed everyone what was in it, even if I gave them names and dates and photographs, it wouldn't matter. Because people don't want to know. They want the clean version, the simple version, the version where we're the heroes and they're the villains and everything makes sense. The truth is messy. The truth is that we recruited war criminals because they were useful. The truth is that we helped them escape justice because we needed what they knew. The truth is that we built our victory on compromises that would have horrified us at the beginning of the war. But by the end, we were tired. We were practical. We did what we thought we had to do, and then we moved on. I moved on too. I came home. I got a job. I got married. I had kids. I went to church. I paid my taxes. I voted. I lived a normal life. And I tried not to think about that box in my garage. Tried not to think about the secrets I was keeping, the lies I was enabling, the truth I was helping to bury. But you can't really move on from something like that. It stays with you. It shapes you. Every time I heard about a space launch, I wondered if any of the scientists involved had their names in my ledger. Every time I heard about an intelligence success, I wondered if any of the officers involved had been recruited through the program I'd seen documented. Every time I heard a politician talk about American values, I wondered if they knew, if they'd seen the files, if they'd made the same calculations. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. My son asked me once why I kept so much junk in the garage, said I should clean it out, make room for his kids' bikes and toys. I told him I would, told him soon, but I never did, because that box was in there, hidden under all the other junk. And as long as it was there, as long as I knew where it was, I could control it. I could make sure it didn't hurt anyone. I could be responsible for it. That's what it became over the years. Not evidence, not truth, just something I was responsible for. Like a loaded gun you keep in a safe. You don't want to use it. You don't want anyone to find it. You just want to know it's there, under your control, just in case. Just in case what? I never figured that out. Just in case someone needed proof? Just in case history needed correcting? Just in case my silence needed justification? I don't know. It just felt important to keep it, to not let it disappear completely, to maintain some record, however hidden, of what really happened. The bunker where I found it, I've driven past that area. Years ago, when I took a trip to Germany with my wife, we went as tourists, saw the sights, took pictures, and I made a detour, found the street. The building that used to be there was gone, replaced with apartments, new construction, clean, modern, no plaque, no marker, nothing to indicate what had been there, just another street in a rebuilt city. I stood there looking at those apartments, families living there, kids playing, dogs barking, normal life. And somewhere underneath maybe were the remains of that bunker, those corridors, that office, those filing cabinets, all buried, all forgotten, like it never existed. That's when I understood. It's not that people don't want to know, it's that they can't afford to know. Because if you dig deep enough, if you really examine what it took to win, what it took to rebuild, what it took to create the world we live in now, you find things that make you question everything. And most people can't live with that. Most people need to believe, need to trust, need to think that someone, somewhere, is making sure things are right, but nobody is. We're all just doing our best, making impossible choices, living with the consequences, hoping we got it right more often than we got it wrong. That's all any of us can do. That's all anyone has ever done. The documents in that box, they weren't proof of a conspiracy. They were proof of something simpler and somehow worse. Proof that desperate people make desperate choices. Proof that victory comes with costs we don't like to talk about. Proof that history is written by people who were there, who made mistakes, who did what they thought was necessary, and who wanted to be remembered as heroes anyway. I wanted to be remembered as a hero too. That's why I didn't tell. That's why I kept quiet. Because telling would have meant admitting that I'd found something important and had hidden it for 50 years. Would have meant admitting that I'd enabled the very thing I was exposing. Would have meant looking like a coward or a collaborator instead of a veteran who did his duty. So I kept my silence. I kept my secret. I let myself be honored on Veterans Day and thanked for my service. And I never told anyone that my service included burying truth, that my duty included protecting lies, that my honor came with a price I'm still paying. That's the real story. Not the documents, not the names, not the deals. The real story is me. A 20-year-old kid who found something he shouldn't have and made a choice that defined the rest of his life. A choice to protect instead of expose, to maintain instead of disrupt, to keep the world as it was instead of forcing it to become what it should be. I don't know if that was right. I'll die not knowing. But I know it was human. I know I'm not the only one who made that choice. I know there are others like me, veterans who saw things, who found things, who knew things, and who decided for whatever reason to keep quiet. We're dying now, all of us. The last generation who was there, the last generation who knows. And when we're gone, what happens to the secrets? Do they die with us? Do they fade into rumor and speculation? Or does someone find them? Does someone open a box in a garage and discover that history isn't what they thought? That the people they admired made terrible choices? That victory was more complicated than they were taught? If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. I hope they find it. I hope whoever cleans out my garage finds that box and opens it and has to grapple with what's inside. I hope they lose sleep over it the way I have. I hope they feel the weight of it, because that weight shouldn't die with me. It should be shared, distributed, carried by more than one person. That's what I've learned at 92. That secrets don't protect anyone. They just concentrate pain. They take something that should be a collective burden and put it on one person's shoulders. They isolate. They poison. They turn you into a gatekeeper for truth that doesn't belong to you. The truth in that box doesn't belong to me. It belongs to history, to the families who deserve answers, to the people who need to know that their suspicions were justified, to everyone who's been told to trust the official story and has had that nagging feeling that something doesn't add up. They deserve to know they were right, that it didn't add up, that there were pieces missing, that those pieces were deliberately removed. But I can't give them that. Not now. Not at 92 with shaking hands and failing memory. I can't suddenly become the whistleblower I should have been at 30 or 40 or 50. I can't undo 77 years of silence. I can't make myself into something I'm not. All I can do is this: tell you it exists, tell you it's real, tell you that somewhere, in a garage in a town I won't name, there's a box. And in that box is proof that history is messier than we admit, that heroes make terrible choices, that victory comes with costs we don't acknowledge, that secrets are kept by ordinary people who just want to protect themselves and their families and their peace of mind. I'm one of those people. I'm not special. I'm not important. I'm just a man who found something and didn't know what to do with it, and spent his entire life carrying the weight of that uncertainty. I'm just another veteran with another story that doesn't fit the narrative, another piece of evidence that war is hell in ways we don't usually talk about. The young man who walked down those stairs into that bunker, he thought he was looking for weapons or supplies. He thought he was doing his job. He had no idea he was about to find something that would define him for the rest of his life. That would turn him into a keeper of secrets. That would make him complicit in the very thing he'd fought against. That's the real cost of war. Not the bodies, not the trauma, not even the nightmares. The real cost is the choices it forces you to make, the impossible situations it puts you in, the moral compromises it demands. And then it asks you to live with those compromises for 60, 70, 80 years. It asks you to carry them to your grave. It asks you to smile when people thank you for your service and never let on that your service included things you're ashamed of. I'm ashamed. I can say that now. I'm ashamed that I kept quiet. I'm ashamed that I let fear control me. I'm ashamed that I chose my own peace over other people's right to know. I'm ashamed that I took that check seriously enough to burn it instead of laughing it off and telling that man to go to hell. But shame doesn't change anything. Shame is just another weight to carry, another thing that isolates you, another secret to keep. Because if you tell people you're ashamed, they ask why. And then you have to tell them, and then they're carrying it too. And the whole thing starts over. So instead, I'm telling you this. Not the details, not the names. Not enough for anyone to find that box or verify my story. Just enough for you to know it's out there. That truth exists even when it's hidden. That secrets don't disappear just because we stop talking about them. That history is full of moments like mine. Moments where someone found something and had to decide what to do with it. And most of the time, they did what I did. They kept quiet. That's how systems perpetuate themselves. Not through grand conspiracies, not through organized cover-ups, through 1,000 individual choices, through 1,000 people deciding that the risk of telling is greater than the cost of silence, through 1,000 boxes hidden in 1,000 garages, waiting for 1,000 deaths to determine their fate. Maybe that's justice. Maybe secrets that can't survive their keepers don't deserve to survive. Maybe if I wasn't brave enough to tell, then the truth wasn't important enough to protect. Maybe the world is better off not knowing. Maybe some things should die with the people who carried them. But I don't believe that. I believe truth matters. I believe people deserve to know what was done in their name. I believe history should be accurate even when it's ugly. I believe we owe it to the people who suffered, who died, who were silenced, to tell their stories even when those stories complicate our own. I just wasn't brave enough to be the one to do it. That's the truth. Not that I was protecting anyone. Not that I was being practical or wise or strategic. I was just scared. Scared of being alone. Scared of being judged. Scared of changing how people saw me. Scared of losing the simple narrative where I was a hero who did his duty and came home and lived a good life. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. That narrative was a lie, or at least incomplete. My life was good, but it was built on silence, on choices I'm not proud of, on secrets I kept because it was easier than telling. And now I'm 92 and running out of time, and I'm finally admitting it. Finally saying out loud that I failed, that I found something important and I buried it because I was more concerned with my own comfort than with truth. That's my confession. Not the documents, not the names, not the details. My confession is that I was a coward, that I am a coward, That I'm telling you this story without telling you enough to actually do anything about it. That I'm unburdening myself without providing any real answers. That I'm asking for understanding without offering justice. Maybe that makes me worse. Maybe staying silent completely would have been more honest than this half-truth. This admission without revelation. This confession without consequences. But this is all I have left. This is all I'm capable of at 92 with arthritis in my hands and cataracts in my eyes and a heart that skips beats and reminds me daily that my time is ending. I found documents in a bunker in Germany in April of 1945. Those documents revealed things about the end of the war and the beginning of the peace that contradicted the official narrative. I kept those documents. I hid them. I was approached and paid to keep hiding them. And I did. For 77 years, I did. That's my story. That's what I'm finally ready to tell. Not the full truth, not the complete picture, just my part in it. Just my choice and my failure and my decades of rationalization and doubt. Just the confession of a man who wants to die with a lighter conscience even though he knows he doesn't deserve one. The box is still there, still hidden, still waiting. When I die, someone will find it. Maybe they'll do what I couldn't. Maybe they'll bring it to light. Maybe they'll give those names and those families the truth I couldn't give them. Or maybe they'll do what I did. Maybe they'll look at what's in that box and decide that some secrets are too heavy to carry alone, but too dangerous to share. Maybe they'll hide it again, bury it deeper, ensure my silence becomes permanent. I don't know which outcome I want. Part of me wants exposure, wants vindication, wants proof that I was right to carry this burden all these years, wants the world to see what I saw and understand why I struggled with it. But part of me wants it to end, wants the secret to die with me. Wants my family to remember me as a good man who served his country and not as a keeper of ugly truths who lacked the courage to share them. Both outcomes are selfish. Both are about me and my peace and my legacy. Neither is about the people who deserve answers, the families who never knew what happened, the witnesses who were silenced, the junior officers who tried to tell the truth and were punished for it. They deserve better than my cowardice. They deserved better 77 years ago. They deserve better now. But I can't give them better. I can only give them this story, this admission, this partial truth that acknowledges their pain without actually addressing it. This confession that I kept secrets without revealing what those secrets were. It's not enough. It's not nearly enough. But it's what I have. It's what I'm capable of giving. So if you're listening to this, know that there's more. Know that history has layers that haven't been exposed. Know that the people you admire made choices they're not proud of. Know that victory came with costs we don't discuss. Know that secrets exist. Know that people like me kept them. Know that we struggled with them. Know that we died with them. Know that somewhere, buried in the documentation of the past, are truths that would change how you understand everything. And know that I'm sorry. I'm sorry I wasn't braver. I'm sorry I chose silence. I'm sorry I let fear guide me instead of principle. I'm sorry I was more concerned with my own comfort than with justice for the people who deserved it. I'm sorry I'm telling you this now, at the end, when it's too late to do anything about it. I'm sorry I'm unburdening myself onto you without giving you the tools to make it right. That's all I have. That's my story. That's what I'm leaving behind. Not answers, not justice, not truth. Just the acknowledgement that these things exist and that someone, somewhere, kept them hidden. Just the confession of a man who found something important and failed to do the right thing with it. Just another reminder that history is written by flawed people who make mistakes and live with regret and die, hoping they did more good than harm. I don't know if I did more good than harm. I served, I fought, I came home, I raised a family, I contributed to my community, but I also kept secrets. I also protected lies. I also enabled a system that valued convenience over truth. So what's the balance? What's the net effect of a life lived partially in light and partially in shadow? I'll die not knowing. Maybe that's the punishment. Maybe that's justice. Maybe spending 77 years wondering was exactly what I deserved. Maybe doubt is the price of cowardice. Maybe uncertainty is what you get when you refuse to choose a side clearly. Or maybe there are no clear sides. Maybe everyone who was there, who fought, who had to make impossible choices in impossible circumstances. Maybe we all did the best we could. Maybe we all failed in some ways and succeeded in others. Maybe we're all just people who lived through something terrible and came out changed and tried to make sense of it however we could. I want to believe that. I want to believe I'm not a villain or a hero, but just a man who did what he thought he had to do. But I don't know if I can, because the choice I made wasn't made in the heat of battle. It wasn't made under fire or under pressure or in fear for my life. It was made in a bunker, alone, with time to think. And then it was made again every day for 77 years. Every day I chose silence. Every day I chose comfort. Every day I chose myself over truth. That's not a split-second decision made in chaos. That's a choice, a deliberate, sustained choice. And I own it. I own all of it. The finding and the hiding and the keeping quiet and the taking that envelope seriously and the decades of rationalization. I own it all. This is me owning it, admitting it, confessing it, not to make amends. You can't make amends for 77 years of silence. Not to seek forgiveness. I don't deserve forgiveness. Not to clear my conscience. My conscience should be heavy. It should be uncomfortable. It should keep me up at night for whatever nights I have left. I'm telling you this because it needs to be said. Because someone needs to acknowledge that these things happen. That ordinary people make choices that shape history. That secrets are kept by regular soldiers and regular workers and regular citizens who just want to get through the day without making waves. That systems perpetuate themselves through our compliance, through our silence, through our decision that speaking up is too costly. I was part of that system. I sustained it, I enabled it, and I'm telling you that now, at the end, so that maybe you won't make the same choice. So that maybe when you find something that matters, something that challenges the official narrative, something that reveals uncomfortable truths, maybe you'll be braver than I was. Maybe you'll speak. Maybe you'll accept the cost. Maybe you'll choose truth over comfort. Or maybe you'll do what I did. Maybe you'll keep quiet. Maybe you'll rationalize. Maybe you'll tell yourself it's complicated and that speaking up won't change anything and that you have responsibilities and people depending on you. Maybe you'll hide your own box in your own garage and spend your own decades wondering if you did the right thing. If that happens, know that you're not alone. Know that others made that choice. Know that we struggled with it. Know that we carried it. Know that we died with it weighing on us. Know that it never got easier. Know that the doubt never went away. Know that we wished every day that we'd been braver. That's what I learned from that day in the bunker. That's what 77 years of carrying secrets taught me. That courage isn't natural. It's not easy. It's not automatic. It's a choice you have to make over and over, even when every instinct tells you to protect yourself. Especially then. I didn't have that courage. I wish I had. I wish I'd walked out of that bunker and gone straight to my commanding officer and handed over everything I found. I wish I'd dealt with the consequences. I wish I'd lived with a clear conscience instead of a comfortable lie. But I didn't. And now I'm 92, and this is all I can offer. This story, this admission, this warning, this hope that someone, somewhere, will learn from my mistake, will be braver, will choose better, will refuse to let secrets die in silence. That's all I have left to give. That's my final service. Not the heroic kind, not the kind they give medals for, just an old man telling young people to be better than he was, to do what he couldn't, to have the courage he lacked. If you're still listening to my story, I'd appreciate if you'd hit that like button and subscribe. It means these memories won't be forgotten. I won't be forgotten, but I won't be remembered the way I wanted either. I wanted to be remembered as a veteran who served honorably, as a good husband and father, as a decent man who did his best. And maybe I'll be remembered that way by my family, by people who didn't know about the box, about the secrets, about the 77 years of silence. But I'll know, even if nobody else does. I'll know that my story is incomplete without this part, without the admission that I found something important and hid it, that I was given a chance to do something that mattered and I let fear stop me, that I lived a comfortable life built on buried truth. That's the real Henry Lawson, not the hero, not the veteran, not the good man, just a person, flawed, fearful, human, someone who made mistakes and lived with them and is trying, at the very end, to at least acknowledge them, to at least admit that he failed, to at least warn others not to follow his example. The box is still in my garage. It'll be there when I die, and someone will find it, and they'll have to decide what to do with it. And whatever they decide, it'll define them the way my decision defined me. That's how these things work. That's how history perpetuates itself, through individual choices, through moments where someone has to decide between comfort and truth, between safety and justice, between themselves and something larger. I chose myself. I chose 77 times, every year, every month, every day. I chose silence. I chose comfort. I chose to let the secret live with me instead of sharing it with the world. And I'm not asking you to understand. I'm not asking you to forgive. I'm not asking you to think I had good reasons. I'm just asking you to remember that this happened, that people like me exist, that secrets like mine exist, that history has hidden layers, that truth is complicated, that the people you think are heroes might be carrying burdens you can't imagine, that everyone who lived through the war came home changed in ways they never talked about. I'm asking you to remember that war isn't clean, victory isn't pure, history isn't simple, and the people who were there, who saw it, who lived it, they're just people, trying their best, making mistakes, living with regret, hoping they mattered, hoping they did more good than harm, hoping their lives counted for something despite their failures. My life counted for something. I know it did. I was a husband, a father, a friend, a worker, a citizen. I contributed. I helped. I made people's lives better in small ways. But I also failed. I also kept secrets. I also enabled injustice through my silence. Both things are true. That's what I'm asking you to understand. That people contain multitudes. That we're all capable of good and bad. That one choice doesn't define us completely, even though it shapes everything that comes after. The choice I made in that bunker shaped everything that came after. It shaped how I saw myself, how I saw authority, how I saw truth, how I saw my country, how I saw my role in history. It turned me into a keeper of secrets instead of a teller of truth. It made me complicit instead of courageous. It made me choose comfort over conviction for the rest of my life. And I'm telling you this now because I want you to know that choice has a cost. That silence has a price. That keeping secrets eats at you. That you don't get to escape it by telling yourself you're protecting people or being practical or doing what's necessary. It follows you. It shapes you. It defines you. Even when nobody else knows, especially when nobody else knows. So that's my story. That's what I'm leaving behind. Not a confession that changes anything. Not a revelation that exposes anyone. Just an acknowledgement that I failed. That I found something important and buried it. That I lived with secrets I should have shared. That I chose wrong and knew it and did it anyway, and spent 77 years living with that knowledge. This is all I have left to say. I found documents in a bunker. I kept them hidden. Someone tried to pay me to keep hiding them. I refused the money but kept the secret anyway. And now I'm 92 and dying, and finally admitting that I failed everyone who deserved better. The families who needed closure, the witnesses who needed validation, the truth that needed telling. I failed them all. That's who Henry Lawson really was. Not a hero, just a man who made a choice and lived with it and is trying, at the very end, to at least be honest about what that choice cost, what it cost the world, and what it cost him, what it means to carry secrets, what it means to choose silence, what it means to die knowing you could have done better but didn't. I'm sorry. To everyone I failed, I'm sorry. That doesn't fix anything. That doesn't change anything. That doesn't give back what was lost or expose what was hidden or make anything right. It's just all I have left. Just an old man's apology. Just an admission that I wasn't brave enough, that I wasn't good enough, that I failed when it mattered. And maybe that's the real lesson, that we all fail sometimes, that we all make choices we regret, that we all carry burdens we wish we'd never picked up, that being human means being flawed, that doing our best sometimes isn't good enough, that we live with that reality and die with it and hope somehow that the good we did outweighs the harm. I don't know if mine did, I'll never know. But I'm telling you this anyway, because silence is what got me here. Silence is what I'm trying to break, even if I'm not breaking it completely, even if I'm not telling you everything, even if I'm not giving you enough to actually do anything. I'm telling you what I can, what I'm brave enough to share, what I'm capable of admitting. It's not enough. It's never enough, but it's what I have. It's my final offering, my last confession, my attempt, however inadequate, to leave the world with a little more truth than I found it with. Even if that truth is just about me, about my failures, about my choices, about what it cost to keep secrets for 77 years. That cost was everything. It cost me peace. It cost me certainty. It cost me the ability to believe I was a good man. It cost me the comfort of a clear conscience. It cost me the simplicity of being a hero. It cost me everything but the appearance of normalcy. And that appearance, that facade, that comfortable lie, it wasn't worth it. If I could go back, if I could talk to that 20-year-old in that bunker, I'd tell him to take those documents straight to his commanding officer. I'd tell him the consequences of speaking up are easier to live with than the consequences of staying silent. I'd tell him that courage is choosing truth even when it costs you everything. I'd tell him that regret is heavier than any punishment authority could hand down. But I can't go back. I can only go forward. And forward for me is very short now. Days, weeks, maybe months, not years. Not enough time to make amends. Not enough time to fix what I broke. Not enough time to do anything but this. Tell this story. Make this confession. Leave this warning. Don't be me. Don't make my choice. Don't let fear keep you silent. Don't let comfort matter more than truth. Don't carry secrets that should be shared. Don't enable injustice through inaction. Don't let the appearance of normalcy become more important than the reality of honesty. Be braver than I was. Be better than I was. Be the person I wish I'd been. That's all I'm asking. That's all I can ask. That's my final request, my last hope. My attempt to make my failure mean something by warning others not to repeat it. This is Henry Lawson, 92 years old, WWII veteran, husband, father, keeper of secrets, teller of lies, coward, human. This is my story. This is my confession. This is my warning. Learn from it. Or don't, but at least know it happened. At least know people like me exist. At least know that history has hidden corners and buried truths and secrets that die with the people who carry them. At least know that.